Now we're going to be looking at the elif statement. The elif statement allows us to provide alternative conditions. So let's take a look at this. We'll have age is equal to, we can simply provide a value. So let's say 20. And so we have if age is greater than or equal to 18, we can have print adult. Now I'm going to have an else clause. So we'll have else, we'll have print non-adult or child. So let's quickly run this, and as you can see, we have adult because the age is 20. But if I change this to 14 and run the program, you can see we have non-adult or child. Now the problem with the traditional or the conventional if statement is that it only allows you with two options. It gives you only two options. That is when you're using it with the else clause. It's either this or that. And in this program, we may want to have something like a child that is for age below 18. So we can have something like less than 18. We may want to have adult. Adult should be 18 and above. So we can have something like greater than or equal to 18. And finally, you may want to have something like elderly. And this should be greater than or equal to 65. So what this means is that for the child, this should be 0 to 17. And for the adult, adult should be 18 to 64. And for elderly, it could be anything from 65 and above. Now, I'm going to be using the elif to introduce more conditions. And in this case, we're going to have if age is less than 18, we can have print child. Now, I'm going to be using the elif statement to introduce more conditions. So we can have elif, then you provide a condition. And in this case, I'm going to have age is less than 65. And the reason for this is because we already have child to be less than 18. And as you can see here, adult is between 18 and 65. So we can simply say that if the age is less than 65, it means it should be an adult. And the reason for this is because before this elif condition or this elif statement get to execute, the condition here must be false. What this means is that if the age is less than 18, this elif clause would not execute. The only way it gets to execute is if we have age greater than or equal to 18. And keeping in mind that we have elderly, we cannot simply say age greater than or equal to 18. So the best bet is a condition that captures any age less than 65. And so we can have print adult. Now we can use an else clause for the elderly. Here we can have else and we'll have print elderly. So let's quickly run the program. And as you can see, we'll have a child because the age provided is 14. If I change this to 20, we're going to get an adult. And if I change it to 65, we're going to get elderly. Then the beautiful thing about the elif statement is that you can have as many elif statements as possible. So instead of just ending the program like this with the else clause, we can also provide another elif statement that targets specifically the elderly. So we can have something like this. Elif, here we can have age less than or equal to 100. What this means is that elderly is between 65 and 100. So any age above 100 is no longer elderly. And so we can have something like print elderly. Then we can now provide an else clause. Here we can have print, we can simply say too old. Now let's run the program. We'll have elderly. I can change this to 101, and this is going to give us too old. So this is how we make use of the elif statement. Now we're going to be providing another example. And in this example, we're going to be determining grades based on scores. So we'll start by having the variable score. So we can just have a score like 50. Now I'm going to establish the grades. I'm going to be starting with the first one. So we can call this one an A. And for the A, we're going to have 70 to 100. Now let's look at the B. And we're going to have 60 to 69. Then we'll have C. For the C, we have 50 to 59. Then finally, we'll have F. For the F, we're going to have below 50. Now, I'm going to have if score is greater than or equal to 70, print A. Now, I'm going to use the elif clause to introduce more conditions. So can have elif score is greater than or equal to 60. For this, we'll have print B. Now, we'll have another elif. Here we have score is greater than or equal to 50. And this will give us a C. So we have print C. Then finally, we can have else print F. Now let's try this out. Currently, our score is equal to 50. And as you can see, we have a C. I can change it to 66. And 66 gives us a B. Then we can try 70. Let's say 70. And this gives us an A. Now let me try out something like 101. And this still gives us an A, which is also a problem. Now let me try out 1000. And 1000 still gives us an A. But the problem with this is that scores are usually between 0 and 100. So when you enter outrageous scores like 1000, you should be able to get maybe a warning that you entered an invalid score or an outrageous score. Now let me enter a negative score, minus 10. And if I run this, you can see we'll still get an F. And this is because after the condition score greater than or equal to 50, we'll now have else. So what this means is that any score below 15 is considered to be F. So let me quickly refactor this program. And here I'm going to have elif. So we can have elif score is greater than or equal to 0. Print F. This time around, our else statement is going to capture negative scores. So we can have something like else, and we'll have print invalid score. We can have something like score cannot be negative. So this time around, if we run the program, you can see we have invalid score, score cannot be negative. Now let's handle outrageous scores, that is scores above 100. And to handle this, we're going to be using a concept known as nested if statements. So I'm going to have an if statement. So we can say if score is greater than 10. And inside of this if statement, I'm going to have another if statement. So I can have something like if score, I can have a modulo operator 2 is equal to 0. So let me have something like print. Here I have score is greater than 10 and also an even number. And what this means is that the score has to be greater than 10, and this particular condition establishes whether the score is an even number, because when you have score modulo 2, you are trying to get a remainder if the score is divided by 2. And if that remainder is equal to 0, it means that the number is perfectly divisible by 2. And as such, when we print score is greater than 10 and also an even number, we are correct. So I'm going to change this to, let's say, 20 and run it. So you can see score is greater than 10 and also an even number. Now, if I enter something like 9, nothing happens. And the reason for this is because we only have an if statement. So we can handle a situation whereby score is less than 10, and we'll do this by using an else clause. And if you notice, this if statement and the else statement are on the same level. So here we can have something like print, you can say score is less than 10. So this time around, if I run it, you can see score is less than 10. Now I'm going to be changing this to 15 and run the program, and nothing happened. And the reason for this is that this score, of course, is greater than 10. But the nested if statement here only handles even numbers. So if I want to take care of the odd numbers, I can have else. Here we can have, let me quickly copy this print statement and paste it below. And here I'm going to use an odd number. Notice the indentation level. This if statement and this else are on the same level. And this one, which is the outer if statement, and this else statement are on the same level. So this time around, if we run it, you can see score is greater than 10 and also an odd number. So let's go back to our program. Here I'm going to have another if statement under the score greater than or equal to 70. So I can have something like if score is less than or equal to 100, print A. Then we'll have an else clause. For this else clause, we can have print invalid score greater than 100. So change this to 100 and we'll run it. You can see we have an A. If I try 101, we're going to have invalid score greater than 100. So this is how we use the elif statement in our control structures. Next, we're going to be looking at the loops.